welcome Susan Schuppli to show her film Time Lab, and then we will open out to a discussion. So after Susan's film, we'll open all the curtains and wake up a bit, and I'll invite everybody who's been speaking today to come up to the panel. And those of you who can't hear at the back, you'll have to kind of edge forward a bit. And I hope that you've been noting down questions for the panel, or ideas or things that you want to reflect upon in the group. So we'll do that for another half an hour before we close. So without no further ado, Susan Schuppli will introduce and show her film. Video. And I'll would you like a little light in, so that you're not completely
No, I'll just say, I'll keep it super short, and I'll just say a few words, and then we can dim the lights and watch. It's a 6-minute video, and it's called Time Lag, and it's based on research I did at a certain moment when I was working on Chernobyl. And I was thinking about this today, just in terms of, by way of an introduction, because my so-called day job, if you will, is I work within the human rights context in relationship to international humanitarian law. And so we're always working with urgency. So it's the urgency of the moment that is really what sort of drives our various kind of investigations. And then in my own kind of personal research, the radiological has a very different kind of temporality. It has a certain urgency at certain moments, but then that urgency seems to kind of dissipate, but it clings and sort of lingers into the kind of far distant future. But it operates at a different temporality than the kind of work that I would find myself doing in the day-to-day. And also we don't really work with archival materials at all, but the archive has certainly been at the forefront, or a pretty significant aspect of my own kind of research and work as a contemporary artist. And in particular, one of the things that I've always done is I've always looked at newspapers. So not newspapers as one would find stories online, but the actual printed page. And the printed page can tell us gives us enormous information on, say, the particular significance of an event, all of the other things that might be capturing the world's media attention at that same time. We start to see a set of relationships, and this, for me, this became even much more apparent, the difference between what are the different modes by which we actually enter into history as kind of researchers. If we go into an archive in this case, I was working with microfiche, and I wanted to look at newspapers that were printed in 1986 in April, at the time of Chernobyl. If you were to put on April 26 into Google, you'll immediately bring up Chernobyl. But what really astounded me at the time when I was doing the research was there was no mention of this event for 19 days. And so I was scouring microfiche from various newspapers from around the world, looking for the moment that we have this first representation within public discourse of this cataclysmic event at Chernobyl. So that's what so I would call the video more a little sort of pedagogical kind of illustration, if you will, about this kind of the use of a certain mode of archival material, in this case microfiche. So maybe we'll just play it. And let's just do the lights, Ellie. Can you just, and as long as the sound is on.
недавно нас постигла беда. Авария на Чернобыльской атомной электростанции. Она больно затронула советских людей, взволновала международную общественность. Мы впервые реально столкнулись с такой грозной силой, какой является ядерная энергия, вышедшая из-под контроля. Учитывая чрезвычайный и опасный характер того, что произошло в Чернобыле, Политбюро взяло в свои руки всю организацию работы по быстрейшей ликвидации аварии, ограничению ее последствий. Огромную долю работы и ответственности взяли на свои плечи партийные, советские и хозяйственные органы Украины и Белоруссии. На сегодня 299 человек госпитализированы с диагнозом лучевой болезни разной степени тяжести. 7 из них скончались. От имени ЦК КПСС и советского правительства выражаю глубокое сочувствие семьям, родственникам погибших, трудовым коллективам, всем, кто пострадал от этой беды, кого постигло личное горе.
Anyway, suffice to say that I think that in that 19-day gap, one can start to read the whole historiography of the event. You can read the kind of political maneuvering that was going on at the time in the USSR, the kind of hubris of the kind of this technical malfunction, that there was a kind of widespread denial, the fact that May Day celebrations were underway, and there was a refusal to acknowledge the event that would also, there was a sense in which the event would kind of dampen the festive atmosphere, and then so severely delayed the delivery of iodine tablets. So children, of course, whose cells are metastasizing at a much quicker kind of rate were the sort of the sort of biggest victims. So. And it was oftentimes when I'm talking to the students that I work with, I think it's really important to stress that we can't always immediately turn to the internet for our kind of primary source of information, because in fact the internet, in this case, the internet would have retroactively repaired the timeline and would locate Chernobyl at April 26, 1986. In fact, it does take 19 days before the Soviet state actually admits publicly that anything has happened, even though a US satellite is orbiting at the time and picking up something. It's registered in Sweden. The radioactive isotopes are actually ultimately discovered at Forsmark, at the nuclear plant in Forsmark. When a worker goes in and sets off the detectors in Sweden, they realize that they start to investigate, and they realize that the isotopes that have been registered are not those produced by the Forsmark plant, but are coming from elsewhere. So this gap, certainly for me, I think became this kind of conceptual breach that allowed me to start to unpack the whole kind of history of the event. And that would have completely disappeared if I relied exclusively on kind of online sort of search and online kind of materials, so that by going back to the library and looking at the newspapers of the time, I could start to have a different understanding of the temporality of that particular event over the course of those 19 days.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to ask a question straight away, Shelley, or should we wait till everyone's up?
Well, I can respond just quickly if I have a chance.
Yeah, go for it.
Just, it's interesting because you looked at the Soviet newspapers. Now, if you've looked at other countries' newspapers, you've picked up a different timeline
around the world.
I was there in the sense that I was working at HPA at the time it happened. I was at work over the entire weekend the May Day bank holiday weekend, because at that time we realised that there was something important going on and we needed to respond to it. That was before 19 days. So, but you know, that's not necessarily reported in the newspapers. And I'm just sort of saying, beware of the accuracy of newspapers in terms of people's understanding of what's going on.
No, I mean,
it doesn't give you the whole story. That's all. That's
no, I appreciate your point. I was precisely, of course, the event, as I said, the event is registering across it's registering kind of globally, but there's, what I was interested in is what is that kind of internal denial, and how do we actually understand the politics of that situation internally in the Soviet Union at that time. So of course there's, as I said, an orbiting American satellite has picked it up almost immediately. It's recorded by Landsat, which is an Earth observation satellite. So, but nonetheless, in spite of kind of like global, there was also like a global demand to account for an event, and when it was mentioned, it was extremely diminished in terms of the scale of the disaster. So your point is well taken. It was simply, I was interested in how that was actually looked at domestically, and that was my entry point into understanding the kind of politics of the moment within that particular kind of country.
Let's open this up now to the floor. If I can ask all of the presenters to come up to the front, and Dan, I think, can also contribute to this discussion that we're having. So let's just do that and unpick these curtains. We've got more lights. We can't turn the lights on. So